my name is Autumn Hoffman. Today we're going to be talking about Internet Use Violation. This is for EDL 850, Section VB. Today we're going to talk about a case study evaluation. It's regarding a new teacher and a student who sent a threatening email. We're going to go through this case study by evaluating 5 different categories. So our first category here involves problem identification and analysis. So this is where we're going to learn the who, what, when, and where, and how we're going to solve this. So first off, what do I know? Well, I know we're in a high school. It's in a large city. The school is financially secure. The community around it is very wealthy. The students have the newest item, technology, newest iPhone, clothes. So we're in a healthy district. Our 3 main characters are Principal Dr. Forbes, Teacher Miss Walker, and the student Randy Franks. So let's dive into their characteristics and who they are. Principal Forbes has been a principal for 9 years. He won Principal of the Year last year. He is highly regarded in the school and community, but he only wants the best for his students, so he hires only the most qualified teachers and staff. Academic success is his foundational component. So he has hired Miss Walker. This is her first teaching position. Now she's a little bit older than most starting teachers because she has completed her master's and has completed 1 year in her doctorate degree. She specializes in zoology, botany, and genetics, so it makes her perfect for what Mr. Forbes is looking for. So in this scenario, she's in her 2nd year of teaching. She has very focused on academics, has a high rigor structure for her classes, so it's competitive, hard, and intense, but she's hoping to bring out that academic success for her students. Now, one of the students in her class is named Randy Franks. I don't think he's too fond of Miss Walker. Miss Walker reports that she talks behind her back about her. She noted that he is very intelligent, kind of computer savvy, so she is accusing him of the material emailed, or at least assisting in emailing the website to her. So that is part of our situation. So let's rewind. Now that we know kind of about who our main characters are, we're going to start at the top. So our situation here is Principal Forbes has been receiving phone calls from parents complaining about Miss Walker's class and their student performance. Parents are saying that their students, this is going to be like their first low grade ever. It's very competitive for a valedictorian. They're worried about their academic success. They've never seen their students struggle this much. So Principal Forbes decided he's going to talk to Miss Walker, make some suggestions. She's was trying to implement those suggestions, but she was unsuccessful. So somewhere along the line, someone decided to take matters into their own hands. So in November of her 2nd year of teaching, Miss Walker came back from a long weekend to discover an unidentified email in her inbox. She opens the email and it has a link to a website. She opens the website up and it has some malicious comments about her that are vulgar, and the last final statement is, "Who wants Miss Walker to disappear?" Well, they think they're threatening to kill her, so she immediately calls Principal Forbes to discuss the situation. And he's like, "Okay, calm down. Just send me the URL link and I'll review the content, then I'll give you a quick call back." So Mr. Forbes, or Principal Forbes here, has decided that this is probably just a prank, but he goes ahead and he asks Mrs. Walker, have you made someone unhappy? Is someone frustrated with you? Anyone that you can think that would try to do this to you? And Miss Walker suggests Randy Franks because of his computer skills and him helping out his classmates, and that he had kind of talked behind her back about her and just doesn't like. So Principal Forbes has decided that he's going to set up a meeting for the next day and possibly bring in the school district technologist in order to see where the email has originated from. From this situation, we need some more detail. So what do I need to know is the names of the parents in the complaints, specifically complaints towards Ms. Walker. I want to know how rigorous her course content is. Why was she unable to implement Dr. Forbes' suggestions to reduce the high stress level and workload for her students? And I really would like to know the context behind the word disappear. Is it disappear forever, as in really physically harm a Miss Walker, or is it just from the school itself? Next, we have our problems. Obviously, you can see from our situations that we have several problems. There's 5 main ones that we're going to kind of discuss today and that you will see solved throughout our plan of action. But first off, you have Ms. Walker, who has very rigorous classes and is not promoting student academic success right now. Their grades are declining. Parents are complaining that they're concerned. Their students have never had this problem before, so they don't know how to fix the problem. Third, you have Dr. Forbes is aware. He's tried addressing the issue but was unsuccessfully implemented by Ms. Walker. So there was a disconnect there somewhere, or something happened at that level. Fourth, you have students taking, or another person, it could be student, parent, faculty, staff. At this point in time, it really could be anyone. Everyone has access to a computer. But they are taking actions into their own hands and have now threatened to cause Ms. Walker to disappear. And then you have Ms. Walker finally accusing a student without having a very strong evidential support. It's kind of like pointing fingers at this point, which could cause more legal issues. So here's our situation and problem. Our next category is our proposed plan of action. So the content that you see from here on out is going to be how I would analyze and synthesize and propose a plan of action to solve this situation. So we're going to start off with our step-by-step plan of action. I have 12 steps. So here you'll see here the first 4. My number 1 action is to call the NEA, the National Education Association, for advisement in regards to the legal matters and legally how to handle this situation. I don't want to just turn this over to the authorities and make it a big scene. I want to make sure that I am confidential and discreet with how I'm going to handle solving this case. Next, I'm going to obtain the names of the parents that called. This is going to help narrow down my list, along with gathering the list of all the students that attend Ms. Walker's class. And these are kind of suggestions that were given to me from the NEA. Also, in my opinion, it is evident that you need an advisory board in this situation. So I have established a board that consists of the principal, myself, vice principal, the head of the IT department. In our case, it would be the school district technologist and the guidance counselor. With our advisory board established, next I would like to talk to Ms. Walker. I want her to retell what happened that day and that night when she received her email and opened up the website. After that, I want to analyze what was presented in that website. I want to pull up the actual website and see what the intent was and how severe a threat is the school, students, and Ms. Walker. It is at that point in time the board and myself will decide if the police is necessary. With the laws and regulations that are incorporated on schools and federally, this can easily turn into a federal crime, which I will explain a little bit later. So for this case scenario, in this plan of action, we're going to decide right here that police are not necessarily need to be involved at this moment. So our next step of action is going to be to meet with students. We're going to ask them individually, one-on-one, what is Ms. Walker like? How is her instructional method? Is the class, really hard? Are her instructions unclear and her expectations of assignments? What is going on with the rigor coursework? Also asking if they've ever heard of planning and action to harm Miss Walker. And then next we'll have the IT department trace the IP address, whether it's to the school computer or using their school email address to see where the email originated from. So next we have our disciplinary actions. So once we have determined, if it was the student, our actions are designed for a student at this moment, because the case leads more towards a student. So once we have found the correct student, this is how I would go in advising and disciplinary actions to the student. I want a group discussion with the advisory board. I want the student to be able to explain his or her actions, why, what the intent was, why they thought it was necessary to go that route rather than going up the chain of command and expressing their concerns. Also writing an apology letter to the teacher and having once a week sessions with a guidance counselor regarding behavioral issues. This is where they can kind of learn how to take their concerns and frustrations and stuff and how to effectively use them to make a change in a situation. Kind of teaching those life skills, going from academics and life skill incorporations into a school environment. So next you have the disciplinary actions of Miss Walker. So Miss Walker has a very high rigor coursework, so we really need to assess her expectations and kind of go over those, over her curriculum, her syllabus, her classroom expectations. I would like to pair Miss Walker up with a teacher who has been there for 5+ years in order to have that peer-to-peer relationship as teachers, so they can bounce back and forth ideas. The superior or more experienced teacher can give ideas and how to promote that positive environment and how to effectively analyze what's going on in the situation. I feel like that will work better rather than always having to meet up with the principal, that there will be always a level of disconnect because of the authority. Next, it would be the in-class evaluations. Now this is where I would want to be there personally, observing the classroom, observing one of her classes, seeing how her instructional methods are being used, what the environment is in the classroom. And then lastly, I want to provide a professional development course for the entire staff regarding some of these issues, in regards to internet usage and opening emails that are unidentified and managing the classroom and maintaining that positive environment for the school. My last two plan of actions are more preventatory actions. I want to assess our policies and procedures in regards to our students' performance and using technology and how we're educating, teachers, staff, students, parents on internet safety. I want to make sure that our policies are in line with the new evidence-based practice. So these are the first, 12 steps in how I would handle this situation. Next, we have category 3, resolving the issue and promoting student success. So basically, this is my time where I would like to just bring you some research and say why I chose to act the way I did in the plan of action and disciplinary actions I performed in regards to the advisory board, disciplinary actions to the student and Miss Walker. So we're going to start off here in assessing those laws, again the advisory board, and those disciplinary actions. So the first law that we have in effect is the Children's Internet Protection Act. The schools are required to have monitoring systems, and they're also required to teach educational internet safety, which is great. We receive these E-rated funds and receive technology equipment, and we have this regulation in place, which also has allowed our school district technologists to trace and monitor students by their school email and IP addresses on the computers. Next law we have in effect is the federal law. Now this is a very heavy or hefty law. It states that any form of communication containing a threat or kidnapping to any person or injury to a person shall be fined under this title and can be imprisoned or both imprisoned and fined. So that's why it was so important to understand the intent. This federal law does not look at the intent behind the threat. So in this case, this could easily have gone to a federal court and become a federal crime from a student towards the teacher. That is why, again, I wanted to make sure that I protected my students. Even though they may have committed a crime, I wanted to make sure that they were protected and that we understood the full intent behind their threat. Next, we have the zero tolerance policy. Most schools have adopted this. If they have weapons, alcohol, smoking drugs, make threats, fighting, just overall misbehavior and misconduct, you can suspend the student. Now, is this always necessary? Is this always effective? No. In a couple slides later, I will show you some research in regards to why I personally want to rewrite the zero tolerance policy and progress towards a reaction to prevention policy. Our second is the advisory board. I have made it very clear that I wanted to make sure that we eliminate all bias and keep fairness across the board. Cheryl Stats here confirms the use and the necessary of an advisory board. We make unconscious and involuntary decisions without even knowing it, and they can make a tremendous impact on our decision making. So I wanted to make sure that we eliminated all bias and looked at analyzing just the facts. It is critical for educators to identify any discrepancies that may exist between their conscious ideals and unconscious associations so that they can mitigate the effects of those implicit biases, thereby improving student outcomes and allowing students to reach their full potential. This just levels the playing field in making sure our students are fairly assessed and making sure that no biased opinions, conscious or unconscious associations, were ever implied in this situation, because I want every student to reach their full potential. We're always going to have bumps in the roads and we're going to fail at something, but how we react to that failure is what's going to make us reach that potential. So the disciplinary actions. So you've noted back that I have chose to do a group discussion, disciplinary action, and conferences or professional developments or meetings with individuals. I believe the policies that I write and the decisions that I make and the disciplinary actions I choose for each individual can either prevent further attempts or it can continue to promote this malicious behavior. So that is why I would like to rewrite the zero tolerance policy. In my research, I've discovered this article, Reaction to Prevention, Turning the Pages on School Discipline. Research has shown that higher rates of suspension have lower rating of school safety and significantly poorer school climate. The American Psychology Association concluded that zero tolerance policies was ineffective for reducing individual misbehavior or improving your safe environment for your school. So this is why I felt it was necessary to not suspend a student for this type of action, especially if we deemed the threat mild. I think students really need to understand and have that group discussion of why they acted the way they did. Sometimes we forget that students have not been in this situation or have the life skills that we have as educators and do not know how to express their concerns. So I believe as an educator and building a disciplinary and leader that we need to promote, model, and facilitate these types of communication, of being open and understanding to what students are feeling and making sure that we teach them how to correctively handle conflict, not just ignore it or to use malicious behavior to react to it. Our fourth category is just our debriefing and reflection of the case study. First of all, our number one concern was to keep all parties safe. I believe in this scenario, Ms. Walker and Dr. Forbes handled everything very well. Dr. Forbes handled the parent concerns, addressed the issue. No, it was not successfully implemented, but that's okay. Not everything is going to be successful the first time. Ms. Walker and Dr. Forbes handled the email correctly. She was needed to immediately contact Dr. Forbes and did that very well in addressing and keeping that confidentiality and determining what factors really needed to be sought out and to keep the threat to a minimum. Also, Ms. Walker was unable to create a positive environment, and so it makes me kind of wonder where her skill level is at and what failed with those suggestions and what was suggested. And then I would like to assess the school policies and procedures and see how their policies adapted to this situation to see if they had a set standard step-by-step policy. Our next one here is our unresolved issues. This case study is fairly open-ended. We could not verify that Randy Franks sent the email. There's a lot of other potential students who could have. We do not know the rigor of Ms. Walker's coursework, which would also help in assessing and resolving some of the issues to see how we can assess her instructional level and maybe send her to professional development or choose a correct mentorship for her. And lastly, our further investigation. Now, in my personal development in regards to this case, I feel there is a need for further investigation on protecting teachers against violence. I've done research, read several different articles, understanding this one article, Understanding and Preventing Violence Directed Against Teachers. Out of 2,998 teachers surveyed across the 48 states, 72.5% have experienced at least one harassment offense. Now, after going through this educational course, the EDL 850, I've learned that there are a lot of laws and regulations that protect students and how we need to be careful and how we treat students and discrimination and bias and violence towards a student. But there are very few that protect the teacher and say how much intolerance can the teacher handle. So I believe it should be further investigated and have a research, professional development courses that enhance educators on behavioral analysis ability. That way they understand and can see these different behaviors, but also provide in that development course what rules and regulations they fall under for their protection. They need to know that the school is on their side, that the principal, the other teachers, the parents, but they can also protect themselves. And by protecting themselves, they can protect other students as well. Our last category is category 5, and we're going to reflect on standard 5, promoting that success of all students by acting in that integrity, fairness, and in an ethical manner. So our first one, we're going to talk about the school community. Following our school policies and procedures, having that open communication, and promoting those group discussions all create an atmosphere of positive social and emotional development and increasing their academic learning. The entire school, the entire community, parents, teachers, faculty are all a part of this. If we do not have them involved in these relationships, then it is hard to promote that learning. But we have to all do it with integrity. We have to understand each other's differences. And I think in this case scenario, I used the advisory board. I used the laws and the policies to make sure that I set everyone up on a level playing field and that no one was discriminated against. Which leads me to how we treated, our people, the students, and the teachers, and the advisory board. I wanted to make sure that I was clear to the advisory board and making sure they understood to eliminate all biased opinions, to collaborate as a group and make sure only facts were presented. Collecting statements with each individual student, allows me to look at the evidence, not to point out one student. If I had only chosen 5 students and I had, almost had a biased opinion because I didn't have a lot of evidential facts to choose those 5 students. And then again, following those laws and regulations. And lastly, to demonstrate a personal and professional code of ethics. So again, is that open communication and feedback. We need to have those group discussions and encourage those discussions. I want to be open and promote my professionalism and model it. That way a teacher can see that the professional code of ethics is being lived out, that I want to make them a better instructor or teacher, employee. I want to be there for them. Also, with the decisions and actions and the disciplinary actions that we chose were all based on promoting a safe, healthy, and positive school environment. Education is just not academics, it's also teaching life skills. So I believe in order to have a positive school environment, you need to learn. We'll fail, but we need to learn from those failures. That's creating that healthy, that's promoting that learning and skills to function and be productive in society outside of high school. And lastly, again, the advisory board was our number one key factor here, just of making sure that there was no distortion or bias being presented. Because if we were to not eliminate this, we could bring on more legal issues from just pointing fingers. So these are different in several ways that we promote the professional code of ethics. Every action that I do, every action, word, phone call, email, face-to-face communication that I make really needs to strive to keep professional, making sure that I'm promoting that safe and healthy school environment and wanting to lift up others and enhance other instructors, teachers, staff, school members, students, parents, community members, into striving to be better themselves. And so I thank you for listening on the case study.